Are the people of China as a whole more disciplined than Americans, or is that an oversimplified generalization? Is it more disciplined in certain areas, or more disciplined as a whole? Would you say?
Well, it's always difficult to, yeah, to apply a label to, when we're talking about over a billion people, it gets very hard to apply a label. And like I said, even Hong Kong Chinese are culturally pretty different from mainland Chinese, and so there are differences within obvious differences between the different groups of Chinese people, and also then American-born Chinese are also slightly different culturally than other Chinese across the world. So I would say that the older generation is definitely more disciplined. One of the things that, as a huge lover of Chinese martial arts, one of the things when I go to Hong Kong that I feel is kind of a little sad is that the new generation, they don't really have any desire to train in Chinese martial arts. Now, part of that is the blame of the very traditional Chinese sifus in Hong Kong who have not updated their methods. They're still, like I like to say, they're still partying like it's 1899. They haven't updated their methods and caught up with the time. So it's understandable why the youngsters in Hong Kong don't really have any interest in doing that because most of the old sifus are still teaching like dinosaurs in Hong Kong. But on the other hand, it seems like the new generation, they don't really have that same desire to do a lot of these things because there's such an intense uh, competition in Hong Kong for schooling and getting in the right place and stuff like that. So um, that discipline is perhaps applied elsewhere. It's applied towards schooling, but it's done under pressure to get into the right school. I remember, my wife who grew up in Hong Kong when our daughter was born, she was talking to some of her friends in Hong Kong who were applying in Hong Kong to get their child into preschool because they have to apply for it. And one of the applications in Hong Kong is the competition is so stiff to get into the right schools. What instruments does your child play? Mind you, this is for preschool. And they said, well, our child is learning piano. And the teacher there said, well, piano is the standard one. We meant what else?
Wow.
You go, wow. So, of course, this is definitely a type of discipline, but I also think that there's a tremendous amount of pressure. And so, because of this educational pressure to get into the right schools from day one, um, I don't know how much time they have to apply to these other things. And, the old generation always complains about the new generations. With the old sivus in Hong Kong, like, oh, the youngsters don't want to do martial arts. And maybe it's discipline, maybe it's the fault of the old sifus, and maybe it's just they're under so much pressure to do other things. So it's very difficult to say.